She called him just a delivery boy, laughed in front of everyone. But the moment that black man into her eyes, he remembered the
CEO's daughter insulted the delivery guy, but he knew her secret from the orphanage. You think delivering a package makes you important? Her voice sliced through the lobby like a cold blade. Everyone turned. Phones stopped buzzing. The marble floor reflected her high heels and the anger in her eyes. Sophia Blake, the CEO's daughter, stood tall, flawless, and furious. The kind of woman who had never been told no. In front of her stood a man holding a brown delivery box, his uniform slightly faded, his shoes worn out. Ethan Cole. His hands were steady, but his eyes were heavy, like they'd seen too much pain to care about insults anymore. "I'm just here to do my job," he said quietly, his tone calm, almost gentle. "Then, do it somewhere else," she snapped. "You people always smell like sweat and cheap coffee." The room went silent. A few interns exchanged awkward glances. Someone whispered, "That's too harsh." But Sophia didn't care. She was the boss's daughter. Her pride was her armor. Ethan's lips pressed together, but his stare didn't break. There was no anger, only a strange sadness, a quiet recognition. He looked at her not like a stranger, but like someone who knew her once. She didn't recognize him. How could she? 15 years had changed everything. The city had changed, the faces had changed. But her eyes, those gray eyes, were the same ones that used to stare out of the rain-stained window of St. Clair's Orphanage. He remembered that night. The small girl with tangled hair who used to whisper, "One day I'll wear real shoes and never look back." Now she was standing right in front of him. Beautiful, rich, heartless. And she didn't remember the boy, who once gave her his only blanket on a freezing night. Ethan exhaled, almost a whisper to himself. "Guess dreams do come true, Sophia." But not all of them. Her head tilted. "What did you just say?" But he was already walking away, leaving her confused, curious, and strangely unsettled. The camera would have followed him out the door, the quiet delivery man with a storm in his heart, while Sophia stood frozen, haunted by a voice she didn't understand. The rain always fell harder on St. Clair's Orphanage. It was a place where dreams grew cold before they could bloom. Cracked walls, leaking ceilings, and children who spoke more through their eyes than words. Among them were two, Ethan and Sophia, inseparable like brother and sister, though life had already taught them that love didn't last. Sophia wasn't born in that orphanage. She was dropped off there, by a man in a black suit who never turned back. Ethan remembered that day like it was carved into him. She cried the whole night, clutching a small bracelet with the letter S carved into it. Ethan had nothing, not even shoes, but he tore his old blanket in half and wrapped it around her shoulders. "You'll be warm now," he had said. He was only 10, she was 8. From that day they shared everything: food, secrets, fear, and the quiet wish to be seen. She used to whisper to him under the flickering light, "One day, Ethan, I'll get out of here. I'll be someone. I'll never let anyone call me an orphan again." And he believed her. He always did, but fate doesn't ask permission before breaking hearts. When Sophia was 12, a wealthy couple came to adopt a child. They chose her. The papers were signed, and within hours she was gone, leaving behind her broken bracelet and a boy staring through the rain-soaked window, holding back tears he couldn't understand. Years passed. The orphanage closed. The world moved on. But not Ethan. He never forgot that girl with fire in her eyes, the one who used to dream under broken roofs. He wondered what became of her, if she remembered him, if she still wore that hope like a crown. And now, here she was, the same eyes, the same voice, but her heart, it wasn't the one he knew. Ethan didn't want revenge. He didn't want pity. He wanted answers. How did the girl who once shared her bread become the woman who spit on kindness? As the elevator doors closed behind him, his reflection stared back. The uniform, the tired eyes, all reminders of the world that never gave second chances. But deep inside, A quiet promise burned again. You forgot who you were, Sophia. But I'll remind you, not with words, but with truth. And that's where the real story began. 3 days later, Sophia was sitting in her father's glass-walled office on the 35th floor of Blake Tower. The city stretched below her like a kingdom. Cold, distant, full of people she thought she'd never need. But that morning, something was off. Her assistant, nervous and trembling, walked in holding a folder. "Ma'am," the delivery company called again. They said the same guy, Ethan Cole, needs your signature for the corporate supply audit. Her hand froze over her coffee cup. That name again. Ethan. Something about it clawed at her memory. "Send him up," she said, almost without thinking. Minutes later, the elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Ethan stepped out wearing the same uniform, same calm eyes, but this time there was a quiet confidence in the way he walked. He wasn't here to deliver boxes. He was here with purpose. "Miss Blake," he said politely, placing a file on her desk. "You need to sign this for your father's upcoming contract." She nodded coldly, picking up the pen. But as she glanced at the paper, her hand shook slightly. The company logo on the folder said St. Clair Foundation. Her throat tightened. "Where did you get this?" Ethan looked at her, voice low and calm. "It's the orphanage, the one they shut down. We're trying to rebuild it." The pen slipped from her hand, clattering onto the desk. Her carefully built walls started to crack, but she tried to hold her expression still. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said quickly, forcing a laugh. Ethan stepped closer. His voice softened, not mocking, but heavy with memory. "You used to draw flowers on the broken windows, Sophia. Said they made the place feel alive. I was there. I was that boy who held your hand when you cried the night they took you away." Her breath caught. For the first time in years, her eyes softened, a flicker of the old girl still hiding behind her polished mask. But pride pushed it down. "You're mistaken," she whispered. "I don't know you." He nodded slowly. "Maybe. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever." As he turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of something in his hand. A small, rusted bracelet with the letter S on it. The one she'd lost years ago. Her world stopped. Memories flooded back. The rain, the cold, the boy, the promise. And for the first time, the CEO's daughter didn't feel powerful. She felt exposed. Ethan didn't look back, but his words lingered in the room like thunder after lightning. "You can hide from your past, Sophia, but not from the people who remember who you really were." That night, Sophia couldn't sleep. The city lights spilled through her window, painting her room in cold gold. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at her reflection. Flawless, confident, powerful. But the eyes staring back at her didn't look powerful. They looked terrified. She sat on the edge of her bed and opened the news app. There it was. Blake Enterprises partners with St. Clair Foundation for charity revival. A photo of Ethan shaking hands with the mayor sat under the headline. Her heart dropped. He wasn't just a delivery man anymore. He was leading the project, the same orphanage she had spent years pretending never existed. Her past wasn't knocking on her door. It was walking right into her boardroom. She threw her phone aside and covered her face. The smell of the rain, the laughter of children, the cracked walls of St. Clair, they all came flooding back. For years, she had buried that girl. The one who used to cry at night, who swore she'd never be poor, never be forgotten. She had built her whole life around running away from who she was. But Ethan... Ethan remembered, and for some reason, that hurt more than any insult she'd ever received. The next morning, she walked into the office early. Her father was on a call, pacing near the window. "Sophia," he said without looking up, "we're donating $2 million to that St. Clair project. Great PR move. This Ethan guy is doing wonders for our image. Maybe meet him. Make it look personal." Her chest tightened. Make it look personal. He had no idea how personal it already was. She nodded faintly, hiding the storm brewing inside her. As she turned to leave, her father called out again, "You know, Sophia, people love redemption stories. Maybe this one's yours." The words hit her like a whisper from the past. That afternoon, she found herself standing outside the Foundation's temporary office, heart pounding, unsure if it was pride or fear that kept her frozen at the door. Inside, she saw Ethan laughing with a few volunteers, his face calm, kind. The same boy from years ago, only stronger. For the first time in her adult life, she felt small, not because she had less, but because he had something she'd lost. Peace. She took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and said quietly, "Ethan, we need to talk." The sound of rain hit the windows again, almost poetic, as if the sky remembered them too. Ethan looked up when Sophia entered the small office. The volunteers greeted her politely, unsure why a woman in designer heels and diamond earrings was standing in a room full of peeling paint and second-hand furniture. He didn't speak. He just watched as she walked toward him, her expression cold, but her eyes trembling. "You shouldn't have come here," she said quietly, her tone trying to hold on to control. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag and looked her straight in the eye. "And you shouldn't have forgotten where you came from." The words hit her like thunder. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. There was no arrogance left, no shield strong enough to block that truth. He continued, his voice calm but filled with pain. "You were my family once, Sophia. We both had nothing. We dreamed together. And when you left, I thought you'd make it. For both of us. But you erased that part of your life like it was dirt on a shoe." Her eyes glistened. "You don't know what I went through," she said, her voice breaking for the first time. "I was adopted, yes, but it wasn't a fairy tale. They wanted a daughter to show off, not to love. I was a project to them, a way to look generous in front of cameras. Every dinner, every smile was an act. I learned to lie to survive." The room went silent. Ethan's expression softened. The pain in her voice was real, too real to fake. She took a step closer. "So I built myself. I worked, I climbed, and I promised I'd never look weak again. I thought, if I buried that girl, no one could ever hurt me like that again." Ethan's eyes lowered for a moment, then met hers again, and in doing that, you hurt the one person she was meant to protect. Yourself. Tears rolled down her cheeks now, silently. The woman who had everything stood trembling in front of a man who had nothing, yet somehow he was stronger. "I didn't come here to shame you," Ethan said softly. "I came to remind you who you were, because that girl, she was kind, she was brave, and she believed that being poor wasn't something to be ashamed of." Sophia covered her face, the tears finally breaking free. Her voice cracked like a child's. "I don't even know who that girl is anymore." Ethan's hand rested gently on the table beside her. "Then come find her," he said. "Start with St. Clair." For the first time, she didn't argue. She just nodded, slowly, brokenly, as if her heart had finally remembered how to feel. The next morning, the city felt quieter. Sophia drove alone, without her driver, without her usual luxury. Just her, a plain car, and a heart full of noise. The address Ethan had given her lay scribbled on a slip of paper. It led her down narrow streets she hadn't seen in decades, until she finally stopped before a crumbling building with faded blue gates, St. Clair's Orphanage. The paint was peeling, windows shattered, but the sign still hung, worn, but stubbornly alive. She stepped out of the car slowly, heels sinking into the wet dirt. For a moment she just stood there, staring at the place that had once been her entire world. She walked through the gates. The floor creaked beneath her. Every corner whispered memories. Laughter, hunger, tears. There, in the corner, was the broken window she used to draw flowers on with chalk. Her fingers trembled as she touched the cracked wall. The smell of old wood, the echoes of her childhood, it all came rushing back. She sank to her knees. The tears she'd been holding for 15 years finally spilled freely. "I'm sorry," she whispered into the dust. "I'm so sorry I left you behind." Behind her, a soft voice spoke. "You didn't leave, Sophia. You survived." She turned. Ethan stood at the doorway, holding a box of supplies and a quiet smile. He wasn't dressed in his uniform anymore. Just a simple shirt and rolled sleeves, paint stains on his hands. He walked in, setting down the box beside her. "We're rebuilding it, not for us, but for the kids who'll come after, so they don't grow up thinking being forgotten means being worthless." Sophia nodded slowly, wiping her tears. "I want to help," she said. "Not as a Blake, as me." Ethan smiled faintly. "Then you already are." They spent the day painting walls, scrubbing floors, and repairing what time had broken. Sophia's hands blistered, her clothes stained, but she didn't care. For once, she wasn't running from her past. She was touching it, healing it, turning it into something new. As the sun dipped below the skyline, light spilled through the windows, landing on the drawings she had made years ago, still faintly visible. She smiled through her tears. "It's strange," she whispered. "The more dirt I clean off these walls, the more I feel alive." Ethan looked at her, his voice quiet. "Because you're finally home." And for the first time since childhood, Sophia truly believed him. A week later, the annual Blake Enterprises Charity Gala shimmered under the city lights. The chandeliers glowed, the rich laughed over champagne, and cameras flashed at every turn. For Sophia, this night was supposed to be about image, about perfection. But tonight, she wasn't here to hide. Her father smiled proudly as reporters gathered. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "our company has pledged millions to rebuild the St. Clair Foundation. It's proof that success means nothing unless we give back." Applause filled the room. Sophia stood beside him, her gown flawless, her posture strong. But her heart was trembling. She looked toward the entrance and saw Ethan standing quietly at the back, dressed simply, watching her. A silent nod from him gave her the courage she needed. When the host handed her the microphone, she froze for a moment. The crowd expected a polite speech. Instead, she took a deep breath and said the words no one expected. "I wasn't born into luxury," she began softly. "I wasn't raised in a mansion. I was raised in St. Clair's Orphanage." The room fell silent. Her father's smile faded instantly. Cameras stopped clicking. Every whisper in the hall died. She continued, voice trembling but steady. "Yes, I'm the CEO's daughter now. But before that, I was a scared little girl who shared stale bread with another orphan named Ethan Cole. I spent years pretending that chapter of my life didn't exist because I thought people would judge me. That being poor was something to be ashamed of. But I was wrong." Her eyes found Ethan's in the crowd. "The people who start with nothing are the ones who know the true value of everything." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "If my story changes one life tonight, if one child believes they can be more than their pain, then that's worth more than any business deal or brand image." The crowd sat frozen. Then a slow clap began. One person, then another, until the whole room erupted in applause. Some cried, some stood. Her father just stared. Shock, pride, confusion all tangled together. Ethan smiled faintly. She had done it. Not for him, but for herself. After the speech, she walked down the stage and met Ethan by the exit. "You knew this would ruin my reputation," she said softly, half smiling through tears. He shook his head. "No, Sophia. It just gave you back your name." Outside, reporters swarmed, but Sophia didn't hide. She faced every flash, every question, every rumor, free for the first time. The rain started to fall again, soft and forgiving, washing away the makeup, the fear, the lies. Sophia looked up at the sky, whispering, "Maybe the rain isn't sadness, Ethan. Maybe it's cleansing." He smiled. "Or maybe it's the world clapping for your honesty." "Perfect, Musa." Now we arrive at Part 8, the emotional finale, the final heartbeat of the story. This part delivers closure, poetic justice, and transformation. It leaves your audience in tears, smiling through them, feeling like they just watched a short movie. Paragraph 8. The light, after the rain months later, St. Clair's Orphanage reopened. Not as a symbol of pity, but as a home filled with laughter, books, and dreams. The building was repainted bright yellow, the same color Sophia had once used to draw her chalk flowers. The ribbon-cutting ceremony wasn't grand or glamorous. There were no red carpets, no press walls, just children holding balloons and the smell of fresh paint in the air. Sophia stood before the gate, wearing a simple white dress, her hair tied back, no makeup, just herself. The cameras still came, of course, but for once she didn't flinch. She spoke not like a CEO's daughter, but like a woman who had found her purpose again. This place raised me when the world forgot me. Today, it raises me again. Not as an orphan, but as someone who finally understands what family means. The crowd clapped softly. Some of the old caretakers from the city were there, tears shining in their eyes. Children ran past her laughing, chasing bubbles. She looked at Ethan, standing near the old window where she once drew those flowers, and smiled. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan nodded, a quiet warmth in his eyes. "You did it, Sophia. You found her, the girl you used to be." For a long moment, they just stood there. No riches, no titles, no masks. Only two souls who had walked through pain and found light on the other side. Later, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Sophia placed the old bracelet, the one with the letter S, into a small box and set it on a shelf in the orphanage library. "For the next little girl who thinks she's forgotten," she said softly. "So she knows someone once found her way back." Ethan smiled. "You turned your pain into a map for others, Sophia. That's what real strength looks like." The children sang softly in the background, their laughter echoing in the courtyard. The sky turned orange, and for the first time, Sophia didn't feel the need to look away from the rain. She walked right into it, letting it wash over her. The voiceover would fade in, cinematic and gentle. Sometimes the richest people aren't the ones with money, but the ones who remember where they came from. The screen would fade to black. CEO's daughter insulted the delivery guy, but he knew her secret from the orphanage. And under it, one line would linger like a heartbeat. "No past is ugly if it leads you home."